Hey, it's Fletch. I'm a NETA certified EMP, fresh off the Acela back from Washington, D.C., where I was attending the Safer Buildings Coalition Wireless Technology and Policy Summit 2026. Coming up next on TiPS, Today in Public Safety.
Welcome to TiPS, Today in Public Safety, your go-to podcast for today's breaking stories and public safety news. Here's your host, Fletch, with today's TiPS.
There are conferences that you attend because they're on the calendar. There are conferences you attend because your boss told you to go. And then there are conferences that quietly become one of those places where real conversations happen. The Safer Buildings Coalition Wireless Tech and Policy Summit, held in Washington, D.C. each year, is quickly becoming one of those places. The venue's getting bigger and better every year, and I don't say that lightly. This year, the 2026 SBC Summit brought together wireless leaders, public safety professionals, policy folks, school safety advocates, 911 leaders, technology vendors, and the folks who live in that strange but important space between regulation, infrastructure, and operational reality. In other words, it's exactly the kind of room where public safety needs to be. Because the conversation's no longer about whether a radio works inside a building. It's not about whether a person can call 911 from inside that building, whether they can be located, whether responders can communicate, whether school safety systems can actually reach the people who need to act, whether the building itself supports the emergency response or it quietly gets in the way. And that's why this summit matters. Why this event matters. For years, in-building communications has been treated like a specialty topic. Important? Hell yeah. Technical? You're damn right. But most of the time pushed off into the corner, flagged as a fire code issue, a DAS issue, an ERCES issue, a carrier issue, or a building owner issue. You see, the problem is that emergencies don't really care what department owns the problem. When something bad happens inside a school, a hospital, a hotel, an office tower, or an apartment building, as well as an arena, a government facility, or anything else, the public expects three things immediately. They expect to be able to call for help, they expect 911 to know where the hell they are, and they expect responders to be able to communicate effectively when they arrive. Now, that sounds simple, but it's not. You see, inside buildings, wireless signals get blocked, reflected, absorbed, distorted, overloaded, or simply disappear. Cellular service may be weak. Satellite GPS may be non-existent. And even public safety radio coverage may be inconsistent at best. All of that makes indoor location vague. You may not have building maps that are integrated. And most of the time, emergency systems get installed as separate islands that don't talk to each other. And that's the public safety problem that SBC keeps dragging into the daylight. Most of the time, kicking and screaming. And quite frankly, they're pretty right to be doing it, because the building is part of the emergency communications infrastructure. Now, I know we don't always think of it that way, but we need to. The DC Advantage. Now, holding this summit in Washington, D.C. is not just a location choice. It's actually part of the message. D.C. is where policy, regulation, funding, legislation, and national priorities all collide. So when SBC brings this conversation into that market, it's got to change to the energy in the room. You're not just talking about code compliance. You're talking about national communications policy. You're not just talking about antennas and amplifiers. You're talking about school safety, wireless coverage, NG911, public safety broadband, indoor mapping, and the future of emergency response. And those are the reasons why this event is quickly becoming one of the must-attend stops on the public safety regulatory circuit, certainly in the DC area. You see, this event is focused enough to matter, but broad enough to connect the dots, and that's not an easy thing to do. Many conferences either go too wide or just become a trade show buffet. Or they go so narrow that only 6 people in the room know what the hell all the acronyms mean. The Safer Buildings Coalition Expo seems to be finding that cherished middle ground. Technical enough for the experts, policy-focused enough for the regulators, and operationally enough for public safety, and practical enough for people who actually have to make all these systems work. The people in the room. One of the strengths of this year's summit is the range of voices. Not just the vendors, not just the policy folks, not just the association leaders, but the real operational voices. People who've lived the consequences when communications work and when they don't. And that includes federal policy voices like David Firth, Deputy Bureau Chief of the FCC's Public Safety and Homeland Security Bureau, whose presence is always appreciated because it brings the conversation back to where technology, regulation, and operational reality meet. And around some passionate public safety audience attendees, he's also lovingly referred to as Mr. FCC. And well, if you know, you know. It also includes folks like Heather McGaffin, who leads 911 and 311 for the nation's capital. Heather brings the view from inside the PSAP operation, where technology decisions all become human workload very quickly. From places like the Washington Mall, full of tourists, to the important residences like 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. Yeah, Heather's handled 911 calls from both. And it also brings in folks from around the National Capital Region, like Scott Brillman, the director of Fairfax County Emergency Communications Center, one of the largest and busiest 911 environments in the country. Having many years on the streets in Philadelphia, Baltimore, and now our nation's capital region, Scott understands that public safety communications is not just theoretical, it's actual day-to-day operations. And it's political, it's technical, and is unforgiving when the pieces don't come together more than you can ever think about. But that mix matters, because all too often technology conversations about public safety happen around public safety, but not with public safety. And this summit did a better job than most at putting the operational voices on the stage. And that's important, because a building system that just looks good on a slide can still miserably fail the dispatcher, the caller, or the firefighter. And when that happens, nobody really cared how good the diagram looked. They want to know whose name was on the bottom. 911 inside the building. Now, one of the most important themes here is what SBC has been calling 911 inside. That's more than just a phrase. It's something that matters because it reframes the issue. It's not just about radio coverage for responders. Yeah, that's critical, but it's not the whole story. It's also about the caller. Can the caller reach 911? That's Carey's Law. Can the call be routed properly? Can the location be identified accurately enough to matter? That's the Ray Bombs Act. And can the PSAP see the useful information without getting buried in the useless information? Can the responders find the person once they arrive? That's where in-building wireless, indoor location, mapping, NG911, school safety technology, as well as PSAP integration all start to overlap. And that overlap is where things really get interesting and very dangerous. Because the more systems that we interconnect, the more we need governance. The more data that we start to send, the more we need context. The more automation we add, the more we need accountability. And the more promises we make, the more we need testing. Not the marketing kind of testing, but real testing. Operational testing. Does it work from the basement? Does it work in the stairwell? Does it work during a power failure event? How does it work during congestion? Does it work when the building is full of people? And can it work when the person who's calling can't explain where they are? Those are the questions that really matter. Reality check. Here's a reality check. Buildings are getting smarter. But smarter doesn't automatically mean safer. Smart building can have sensors, access control, cameras, Wi-Fi, cellular enhancements, panic buttons, mapping, visitor systems, and more automation than you can shake a stick at. But if those systems don't help the caller, the dispatcher, and the responder during an actual emergency, then what we built is not safety. It's just infrastructure theater. Now, while that may sound harsh because there's always good intentions in that technology, but the fact is public safety has seen this movie before. A system gets installed, a box gets checked, a certificate gets filed, and a dashboard gets shown. But then when the emergency actually happens, everyone discovers that the assumptions were wrong. The signal didn't reach, the map was outdated, the location was incomplete. Or the notification went to the wrong people. The responder radio didn't work when it needed to. And the Peace app, yeah, they got data, but it was data that they couldn't use. And that's why SBC's work is important. They're forcing the conversation beyond products and into outcomes. Not, hey, did we install something? But turning it into, can help be reached, located, and dispatched, as well as supported inside this building. That's the standard. The bottom line. Look, the bottom line's this. The Safer Buildings Coalition Summit is becoming more than an in-building wireless event. It's becoming a public safety policy event. It's a regulatory event. This year it was a school safety event and a 911 event. It was also a responder communications event. And maybe most importantly, it was a place where all of those conversations are finally happening in the same room. And that is precisely where this industry needs to go. Because the emergency doesn't stop at the front door. The 911 call does not become less urgent because the caller's indoors. The firefighter's radio doesn't become optional because the building is complicated or reasonably feasible, one of my favorite terms. And the dispatcher shouldn't have to guess where someone is because our systems failed to plan for the place where most people spend most of their lives, inside of buildings. Yeah, the building, it's part of the emergency communications system. The sooner that we accept that fact, the better we'll design, regulate, fund, test, and operate the systems that protect the public. So yes, SBC 2026 in our nation's capital was worth paying attention to. And if the trajectory continues, this is going to be one of those events that public safety, wireless policy, and building technology leaders won't be able to afford to ignore. That wraps up this episode of TiPS Today in Public Safety. This is Fletch. I apologize we're a day late on this episode, but we had some technical difficulties while on the road. Remember, you can find more at 911tips.com, and my blogs are on Fletch TV. Stay safe, thanks so much for listening, and if you're in public safety, thanks for what you do every single day. We'll catch you next time. Take care.
You've been listening to TiPS Today in Public Safety, your go-to podcast for today's breaking stories and public safety news. Hosted by Fletch and available every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Catch past episodes on 911tips.com. Be sure to like and subscribe, and remember to join us each week for the latest on NG 911. I am Spider Harrison, the official 911 voiceover dude. Catch me on Sirius XM on various channels, including 90s on 9, the 10 spot, and on the Weekend Countdown on Hits 1. Or don't regret it for the rest of your life. Either way, I'm good.